A warm welcome to the audience who have just joined and those who have been with us since the morning. I am sure they are having a good time by enjoying and learning from the Power Pack discussions. Now, let us move on to the technical session of paper readings. In order to moderate the discussion, I would like to introduce our session chair, Professor Ashwini Kumar. Sir is a well recognized professional with a career spanning of more than 25 years as regulator and academician in domain of urban planning, infrastructure and services. Sir offers courses on environmental and social appraisal, urban water sanitation, technology information, social infrastructure and services. Sir also supports various organizations, government and NGOs in initiatives in promoting water sustainability, environmental education and environmental technology. Now, I would request Sir to preside over as a session chair. Sir, please.
Thank you, Yashraj. Uh, Before we start the session, firstly, I would like to thank Adani Institute of Infrastructure Management and all the speakers who have been with us last 2 days to speak about social and environmental aspects. For that reason, I will also thank AIIM to give ESG a right place. And today morning session also has highlighted the importance of ESG to be part of the business, to be part of the economic development. However, the present session, which focuses on social infrastructure from the perspective of the citizens, from the perspective of the users, from the perspective of the community at large. Uh, I would like to share some of the personal learnings, especially last 1.5 and 2 years when we are in a pandemic situation and we are learning every day a new lesson. We are trying to unlearn something and trying to learn something new every day. What is the first thing what I find is there's no better time than present to understand and the value the present status of the community bonding, social infrastructure, and what is the basic of the healthy life. These are the three things we are trying to understand in the present time. And we have seen in first wave of pandemic, where the social infrastructure failed, or in a way, what lack has been recognized and gaps have been recognized, and we tried to fill it up, and which is itself was insufficient, and we are facing in wave two the crisis again. Community bonding, we have seen the way the migrants have been moving around the country, traveling on foot by thousands of kilometers and suffering. We have all have seen it. So I have nothing to elaborate on that. And also we are learning and going back to our basics in terms of Indian culture, Indian environment, local environment, and trying to learn the importance of the healthy life and what is a different manner we can do it. That's the first thing what I find is becoming important now. Second thing, what we have also observed that financial might or the business progress does not remove the vulnerability. And we have seen it. We have seen the countries who were mightest, who were the financially progressed and developed, has suffered a lot. Probably, I think there is something we have missed while we were hunting, while we were chasing the financial and business progresses. We have missed something, and we have to rethink, and we have to again do the introspection as a country, as an individual, as a business, as a each stakeholder, and then bring out a new way of working. And that's we supposed to have a new normal and not the back to the same normal what we had earlier. And that's a mistake I think several places we are seeing, and we are seeing the repercussion of the same. That's the second thing. Third is cities. I think in present day, the cities have become focus. The cities which were offering best economic progress for the individual, for the businesses and country as a whole also have become epicenter of the crisis today. So that's, I think, where we have, you can say, missed some of the points. Precisely these all were the part of the ESG. From the perspective of the governance, from the perspective of the policy making, from the perspective of the individuals. As an individual, as well, we have a certain responsibility and certain role in enforcing the ESG around us some way. So that's, I think, something we learned it. We also thought, or several regions or several places, we thought that historically we have not impacted by some crisis, and that's the reason we will be very strong and we are not vulnerable. And this also proved wrong. The present second wave, if you see, has changed its location, changed its severity, and changed its impact level. And that's, I think, people are learning now. And people thought that they are less vulnerable because of they are in a particular temperature region, temperate region, or particular climatic region, and maybe I think good governance. They all are in crisis today. So that's, I think, the great learning. So there's all the set theories or all the set theories of the governance, all the set theories of the healthy lifestyle, of the economic progress today are at a crossroad. We have to again think that what exactly the business should be, how the business should accommodate ESG in a right perspective, how the individual can contribute in making ESG as a core of whole life or whole, you can say, progress around that. Education has become another important point. I think most of us are almost got a fatigue of doing online things. 1.5 years, student as well as teacher. So I can tell you from the teacher's perspective, we are also equally fatigued in doing that. But at the same time, we also have to evolve the different methods, different mechanisms to use both the online and offline teaching now onwards. Also, I think several places we thought building up a giant infrastructure, building up a robust and very big infrastructure may give a very good kind of outlook of the city, of a region, of a country. We have this monumental kind of infrastructure, which is today lying vacant, whether it is large airports or whether this and that. So I think they were essentially required for economic progress, but today they are not I think, able to give back something progressive or something productive. The places of congregation, a new socialization, something like a malls, restaurants, downtown streets, or any such kind of places which have been brought forward, thinking that they will be a kind of places where people will enjoy, today are considered to be most unsafe. In a nutshell, the present pandemic situation has turned around all the kind of theories, all the kind of practices, all the kind of development notions, and compelling us to think and think again in terms of what is a basic need of a life which remains unchanged. And this basic need of the life is food, water, good sanitation, good health, supported with a good health infrastructure, and also the social interaction. So these are the basic need of anyone's life, and that all together constitute the happiness index. And we have seen the countries who are maybe falling into the poorest level of individual income are also on the other side some of the happiest community, like Bhutan. So we have seen that. So there is a happiness index, and there is also the kind of progress, or you can say economic development index. These both may or may not be going line in line. And hence the present session of today, which focuses on the social infrastructure and additional dimension of climate change, is one of the important component of infrastructure as a whole. Climate change, which is going to pose a challenge in coming times, in our own lifetime, in form of increasing vulnerabilities, bringing the new challenges, new diseases, as well as the kind of unseen disasters or unexperienced disasters at a different locations. So we need to prepare, we need to have places of society which are resilient, at the same time they also are progressive, and at the same time they are also healthy. We have today two presenters with us who are going to elaborate on climate change perspectives, also the educational institute and the safety perspective of the citizens of the country. And I think at the end of that, we may be able to consolidate, or we may be able to give a thought, what should be the resilient society we aspire to have, and how do we build it? Who are the responsible, or who should come forward to build such kind of society? So from this, I will hand it over back to Yashraj to allow the paper presenters to come forward and present the paper. Thanks, Yashraj.
Welcome, sir.
Shreya,
Thank
you
you.
can present your paper, or you may just share your screen share.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is it visible to all?
Yes, Shreya, it is. Could you please
Okay.
go to the slideshow mode?
Yeah, sure. Starting. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Shreya Rai. I am a final year bachelor student from Ansal School of Architecture, Lucknow. My research topic is student perception of safety, climate, and campus infrastructure, a pan-India survey. Okay, it is set in a premise where majority of the time of the students is spent in academic campuses, and a number of studies have outlined the impact of campuses on students' personality and behavior. Thus, a pan India survey was conducted to understand the students' perception of the academic campuses. A data collected from the students is about their social and recreational campus features and evaluation of their campus on the basis of safety, satisfaction with offered extracurricular activities, infrastructure, and comfort of the climate. The study also evaluates the frequency data about the students' visit to social and recreational spaces within their campus. To put things into perspective, India has about 993 universities, 39,931 colleges, 10,725 standalone institutions. As these universities and institutions have a collective strength of around 37.4 million students, the overall initial perception of the students towards the institute in India depends upon the achievement of the university or the campus in terms of institution ranking like NIRF and job placements. However, studies also suggest that the design and infrastructure of the campus influence the perception and mental health of the students. As per MHRD 2019 report, percentage of Indian institutions having various infrastructure shown in the figure 1, where almost all the institutions have the playground, conference hall, and common rooms. But auditoriums, theaters, and gymnasiums that are elements of social construct of a student's daily life are lacking behind in standalone institutions and colleges. Let's have a quick look on the infrastructure of the infrastructure of the campuses in a student's perception. When for the first time a student enters college campus away from home, he or she has a high prosperity of depression, adverse health consequences, and thus a high need of restoration. Many university campuses have their own green area, including grassy areas, turfs, flower beds, trees, and forested areas, and other landscape areas open to the students. The proximity and access to green areas are related to the psychological restoration and improved health outcomes. Green spaces experiences have significant impact on the perceived stress and psychological recovery. Coming to the methodology, the aim of the study is to understand the perception of different types of campus-built environment on the basis of students' daily routine and preferences. The objective of the study includes the following points: to understand the relationship between student and the academic campuses, to collect the students' opinion about their campus through a pan-India survey, to provide conclusive analysis from the collective data. The analysis modes used are frequency-based statistical analysis, chi-square test for non-parametric database sets. A pan-India survey was conducted to understand the students' perception of spaces in their academic campuses. The questionnaire was shared with the students through digital mean, and they were asked to share it among their institute student circle. Total 208 responses were recorded, out of which 204 were found eligible for the analysis. The survey covered 81 students from 22 states spanning 44 cities and towns. Well, the maximum responses were from Uttar Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, Maharashtra, Uttarakhand, and Kerala. All the recorded responses are shown in the location map figure 2. Out of 204 responses we received, 40% were female and 60% were male. Majority of the responses were from age group 19 to 22. In our initial analysis of the data, we found 45% responses were from private institutions and 55% from government, whereas 120 students were hostlers and 83 were day scholars. Majority of the responses were from engineering and architectural background. In our survey, we found the presence of campus features to the frequency shown in the figure 8, and the data is in line with MHRD 2019 report. The availability of the swimming pool is comparatively lesser than the indoor cafeteria and sports ground. Okay. The respondents were asked how safe they feel on their campus. We tried to establish a link between gender of respondents and their safety index. To do that, two hypotheses were formed. Null hypothesis, that gender of the respondent influence safety index of the campus, and alternative, that gender of the respondent influence the safety index of the campus. We performed chi-square test for the data sets and found the level of significance to be 0.329, which is greater than 0.05. Hence, the null hypothesis cannot be rejected, and as a result, gender of the respondents does not influence the safety index of the campus. In second stage, we tried to establish a relationship between age and safety index of the campus. The students were asked how safe they feel in the campus. As a result, shown in the graph, we found that there is no relationship between perception of safety and age in a final measure. Well, the students were asked that how satisfied they are with the diversity and quality of the offered extracurricular activities. More than half of the respondents reported that they are satisfied with the diversity and quality of the offered extracurricular activity in their premise. They were also asked that how comfortable they are with the climate at their university. More than half of the respondents reported that they are comfortable with the climate in their university. We also run through a frequency-based questionnaire in which they were asked that how frequently they visit to the following spaces in a week. For sports ground and indoor game facility area, 1/4 of the respondents reported that they frequently visit sports ground in a week, whereas for indoor facility area, more than 1/4 of the respondents visits frequently. For swimming pool and gymnasium, more than half of the respondents never visited the swimming pool in a week, whereas half of the respondents never visited the gymnasium in their campus in a week. Indoor cafeteria or canteen and outdoor cafeteria and canteen. More than half of the respondents reported that they frequently visits the indoor cafeteria or canteen in a week, and outdoor cafeteria and canteen, more than half of the respondents visits frequently. Auditorium and cultural center. 1/4 of the respondents reported that they frequently visit the auditorium in a week, whereas for cultural center, less than 1/4 of the respondents visits frequently. For religious spaces and open parks in the university, 1/4 of the respondents reported that they frequently visit the religious space at their campus in a week, whereas open parks in academic campuses, half of the respondent visits frequently. Well, the students were also asked that in the past 12 months, which of the following they have avoided at the university due to fear of their physical safety. There were several points of physical safety concern in and around the college campuses. Figure 18 demonstrates the places that our respondents have avoided due to their concern about the safety. The analysis of the data suggests that around 1/3 of the respondents identified walking around campus, off-campus housing, and neighborhood areas as their major concern of safety. Around 1/4 of the respondents identified parking lots, buses, bus stops, secluded areas on campus, and parties or the other social gathering as minor concern of safety. They were asked that how satisfied they are with the overall experience with the college in terms of campus-built environment. More than half of the respondents reported that they are satisfied with the overall experience with their college in terms of campus-built environment. Coming to the inferences, the results suggest that the perception of the safety in a campus neither depends on the age or on the gender. Half of the respondents in the study reported that they are satisfied with the offered diversity and quality of the extracurricular activities. Around 65% of the respondents felt comfortable with the climate at their college or university. The frequency-based analysis suggests that only one-fourth of the respondents visits the outdoor and indoor sports facility frequently. The frequency-based analysis also revealed that around 80% of the students either do not have a swimming pool or they have never been to one within the campus. In case of gymnasium, 60% of the students either do not have it or have never been to one within the campus. 70% of the students were frequently visiting indoor cafeteria and 65% of the were frequently visiting outdoor cafeteria. In terms of acquiring socio-cultural experience, around 55% of the students either do not have an auditorium or have never visited one within their campus, and around 62.5% students do not have a cultural center or they have never visited to one within their campus. Around 70% of the students either do not have a religious space or have never visited one within their campus. 55% students were found to frequently visit open parks within the campus. The study is an attempt to understand the generalized perception of campus on the basis of the physical spaces. Future studies can focus on region-specific and socially exclusive campuses to understand the relationship between the features of the campus and its perception by the students. These studies can also include frequency-based analysis for students' behavior pattern in order to understand the role and usefulness of different spaces within the built environment of the campus. Thank you.
Thanks, Shreya.
Welcome,
I think now floor is open for the question and answers, and we will have a 10 minutes for this. You have very beautifully brought out in terms of the perception which the students are building right at the beginning of the joining the campuses, staying in a campus for throughout their study period, and kind of facility they need it and what is the present state. However, I think it has linkages in terms of what we need to provide,
Yes,
institute need to provide. At the same time, what the Indian government has a policies and regulations. That's, I think, an additional dimensions. But let's wait that how the audience perceive it, your paper, and have a question in their mind.
Thank you.
Audience, please, you can write in question answers or in a chat box. Yeah. I think meanwhile that audience will absorb it and may have some questions in their mind. I have a one, maybe I think not exactly question, but additional thing, because your whole survey was done online, which has posed limitations on you to gather much more insightful information about the campuses, about the uses in that sense. So, but while you yourself are a student, what is your feeling about the way the student themselves can be engaged to improve this infrastructure and facilities? For example, that you are saying that certain facilities are available, but students are not using that. So what could be the reason of not using that to that extent, and how you can improve upon that? I think you can spell upon this one. Meanwhile, we may receive more questions. Yeah, we are having some questions. Yes.
Okay, so there are limitation that I have put a limitation in my study survey that only college students will answer the questions like there. What I think I can improve in an infrastructure is adding more green spaces to that can help in my mental health. Improve my mental health. I can restore my energy while going on classes, doing classes, research, and all this. They need relaxation spaces, and everyone knows that nature heals.
Yeah, Shreya, one question is now flowing.
Yes, sir.
It is from Mr. Kancharia, and I think question is about your viewpoints of the role of this infrastructure on the career and progression and creative thinking of the students. So I think this also indicates the kind of infrastructure demanded today is very different. The kind of infrastructure were demanded earlier. For example, now student wants a Wi-Fi to be available at all the campuses, every nook and corner, as compared to earlier where we may be asking something else available throughout the campus. So even if they are visiting to the playground, probably a lot of them are sitting at a corner and having the laptop open and doing the Wi-Fi things, or maybe mobile phone, and they're watching some kind of videos or some kind of other materials. So maybe I think the kind of infrastructure and services required has changed over the period. That's, I think, is some question being asked. How does it relate to the career?
It definitely plays an important role in career. They have a good social and infrastructure. If they have good social and infrastructure capabilities, so they can, I think.
Okay. Yeah, another question is about the availability, or you can say making available the religious institutions or religious places within the
Spaces.
campus. So I think campuses are supposed to be, I think, keeping the religion as a separate or as a individual choices rather than a kind of campuses which are focusing on that. Yeah.
Okay. Sir, it depends on the perception of a user or the students that are there. Uh, you can go through my paper. There I have mentioned that how many students they are visiting the religious space in a week. So no.
Yeah. Actually, the question is that why we need to have a religious places within the campus. So since it's the individual choices, and campuses could be kept, you can say, away from the religious kind of things, and for the religious places, people can always visit outside the campus or nearest places available. Naturally, what I'm saying is institution doesn't have to provide it by having a plan or by having the vision, but yes, if it is natural one, it's fine.
People have strong faith, and sometimes, and it can become a source of peace of mind.
Yes.
So I cannot, ask them that I'll remove the religious spaces. This is bad.
Okay.
If they have strong connection, so they can use.
Sorry for intervening. That I'm coming into the conversation because your point of view also is very, very interesting. Could you tell me? I guess what Professor Kumar is asking is, we are essentially not talking about students not being allowed to pray on campus. We are talking about, should the institute support it, and should the institute create spaces for religious worship? Should there be mandated places of religious practice on campus, which is very different from you sit in your room and you pray?
I think institutions, yes, they should have. Yes.
Yeah, another important question which emerges and also indicate what I mentioned, the new kind of demands. There is a question from Urvish. The question is about why don't we also have facilities like a music room, or maybe something like animation room, or something like a new technology and new kind of tools to learn and use. That is what I think the kind of question is, because we are going through the digital revolution, and that's, I think, is something new, new facility probably students may be needing. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you come across any perspective on this? Yeah.
Things should be added with time. It is a part of a social infrastructure. It should.
Yeah. There is another question from Ritvik. How does the role of diversity affect the student choice in selection of campus?
How does a diversity?
Or I think I will reframe it. How does a student decide about selection of a campus, and in terms of the diversity of the infrastructure available, or diversity of the students themselves, like they are belonging to the different community, different regions of the country. How does it affect it? But what is the role of social infrastructure in that, or kind of infrastructure you are talking?
Well, it is a personal preference, first of all. Second, some people prefer NIRF ranks, like I've shown in my PPT, how they select colleges, and some prefer campus features. Some student, when they visit the college, they look after the features that what a campus have.
So you are, from your point of view, or from your survey point of view, the availability of different diverse services or diverse infrastructure do affect attractiveness of the campus for the selecting among
Yes,
the, you can
yes,
say,
it affects the
chosen by the
preferences.
student, yeah, to be chosen by the students. Yes. The last question probably is from Keshav. That did you get a chance to look into the best practices from the few of the foreign universities, or maybe what I was trying to also ask you, that what is the role of the government regulations and the policy, and how does that is reflected in your survey? So did you look into the infrastructure which is regulated and mandated by the government, or did you looked into that what the students feel that this should be available? How did you started to frame your list of infrastructure probably? Yeah.
Well, sir, I've been following some, and probably will add it in future studies further.
Okay, so far I think this best practices component is missing in your, you can say, work, but that can guide you to conclude it much more, you can say,
Yes.
richful way of bringing out what infrastructure do we need, and how the students can be engaged to have a useful infrastructure, not the ideal infrastructure as such, as well as at the same time, how do you make arrangements if the institute do not have a infrastructure locally available. There can be arrangements outside or somewhere where their students can go and have some.
Well, sir,
Yes, yeah, you have something to say.
yes, sir. Well, sir, in my study, I have included the best of Indian institutions like
Okay.
IITs, NITs. The responses were from IITs, NITs, and all. So I think this is what the students think.
So,
Yeah.
Shreya, just in connection to that, I had a question which I pasted in the chat box. The fact that you were saying that most of your responses came from the premier institutes within the country, do you
Yes, ma'am.
think that would have created a sort of bias in the data that you have collected?
No, actually, I've collected it from everyone. I've shared it to everyone for 15 days. Okay, and they're in their circle, student circle. So not only the IITs or NITs, even the Lucknow University, every college, whosoever got the form, my form, so they filled it, the survey form. But
Right. So
that
just since you are beginning your research career, Shreya, just a little tip there, to take it forward. It's a good idea to look at the sample concentration that you have had,
yes,
and also try to see if the sort of sample that you have created, you have got your data from, does it have any inherent biases? Like the moment you say that it's IITs, and
ma'am, 81,
IIMs,
81 institutes. The data is
right?
from
So
81 institutions.
tap your data a little, more stringently, and see if there are some inherent patterns in your sampling. Because those would be, then it's a good idea to make those, a little more. I mean, you can redefine the scope of your work depending upon the biases that are there, and acknowledge the biases openly and say that there could be a possibility. And so that brings in more. I'm sure Professor Kumar would agree with what I'm suggesting.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
would bring in a louder ring of authenticity, so to say.
Sure,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I totally agree with Diti. The thing is that I suggest as such that you have a fairly good amount of data information collected throughout the country. Only thing is that you have to bring out certain points very clearly in terms of the limitation. And we do understand this was done in 2021. And maybe 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, nobody will remember that it was a pandemic year. And hence it is important to list down that as a limitations. What the Professor is indicating, that though in physical or by circulating or visiting to the campuses could have given you the chance to verify, given you the chance to look yourself from the one lens, one type of lens, all the campuses as much as possible, and then conclude something, rather than making kind of perception from the feeder side. So whosoever is given, whatever is the input, that is what you are taking. So that's a one limitations on you. You can't come out so easily in a online mode. That's a one limitation. Secondly, is it's also is a good idea to have a add-on kind of thing. Look into the kind of frameworks, regulations, and the best practices of best campuses, and what kind of resources. You are seeing only the one side of the story. That's a student perception. What kind of resources have been mobilized, and who has mobilized those resources to make this infrastructure available, and what are the new ways a kind of campuses are coping up to provide the facilities, at the same time not investing much. So there is a kind of service contract with the people or with the outside vendors, so that certain facilities are made available to their students, but at the same time they don't invest. So that's where I think it's a new model can be also thought of through your paper, which has a good potential to highlight. Then how does even a city infrastructure, which sometimes sit idle, a lot of stadiums and a lot of places, why don't there allocated days and allocated times for different institutions, if they desire to send and bring their students to have good in terms of the stadiums and gyms and this and that. So these, I think, ways are new ways where we can have some arrangements, and PPP is a one way that one can think of. So you may add the value by having this one.
Sir.
But anyway, thanks to bring out this one of the crucial issue, because education is one of the key element in human development, and probably I think health. I think now in this pandemic year, when you are doing the research, adding the health and how do you educate young adult students in terms of keeping themselves safe, not only for this particular time, present time, for various health issues, which they, I think, comes through the kind of lifestyle get inculcated at the time of colleges, actually. So that's, I think, is important. I think if you can elaborate on that, it will be a very, very good paper to contribute in developing students as a holistic human being. Thanks, Shreya, for your work. Now I think we can go to the second presentation. Kshitij is with us, and I think he is going to elaborate upon perception about a city, on a climate change, and how does the people see the lifestyle changes in context of the climate change. Kshitij.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Good afternoon, one and all. This is Kshitij Tiwari and Dr. Abdul Razak Mohammed. We are from School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada. And our paper is about people's perception about weather changes in Lucknow and how their knowledge of global concerns such as climate change, they affect the choices of a sustainable lifestyle. So before I start off with the paper presentation, I would really like to bring your notice to this girl. This is Greta Thunberg, a Swedish girl who at the age of 8 got to know about climate change as a phenomenon. And she gave up her lifestyle and changed it so as to suit the environment. She gave up eating meat. She gave up traveling from airplanes so that climate change could be saved. And the second picture is of her staring at a very powerful president of United States. This picture was just important to be mentioned here because she as a child also felt that it is very important for the governance to know that climate change is happening and how people are being affected because of it. So if a child of that age can understand this, we as researchers and the scientific community, we need to bring our focus more and more towards this concept of climate change. Starting off with the paper, in the introduction, I would, there's very few things like weather and climate. All of us know what these things are, but many of us, we miss out on the very basic difference between the two terms. Weather is something which has been counted or measured over a very small period of time in a very small place. But climate, on the other hand, is measured over a very long period of time, maybe 3 decades or a century. Climate, it reflects the overall trend of the weather pattern of a place. But weather can change within few hours at any place. Now, the Sustainable Development Goal 13 of the United Nations Development Program, it states that we need to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. So what is sustainability? Sustainability as a phenomena, the term came up when during the 1970s, and especially after Brundtland Report was launched, this term came into picture. Sustainability talks about us using our resources with keeping in mind that the future generations which are coming, they will need those resources too. So we are not to consume those resources entirely. Now, sustainable city planning is an approach of planning cities by managing them in such a way that it ensures human as well as nature's harmony, living together. And it has a four-pronged approach. The first factor is economic, the second factor is social, the third factor is governance, and the fourth factor is environmental. Our paper, it touches the three latter approaches, that is the social phenomena. The objective of the social phenomena, it's about cultural preservation and social inclusion. Whereas the objective of the governance factor, it's bringing the multiple stakeholders together. The objective of environmental approach, it is to bring about a long-term capacity building and functional approach. Whereas the economic factor, it talks about how growth and prosperity can be affected because of it. Now, moving on, the aim of the paper. So we have tried to analyze the various impacts of global climate change in the context of India, especially in the case of North Indian city of Lucknow, the capital of Uttar Pradesh. We have tried to perceive how people have perceived the weather changes that are happening in their surroundings and how it has affected their knowledge about various environmental phenomena, and also whether they would choose a sustainable lifestyle depending upon their perception. So this study was done in a three-pronged approach. The first phase involved identification of people's perception about how Lucknow's weather changed over a period of time. We did a survey and then we analyzed it. Now, the second phase was to identify people's knowledge about sustainability and the various terms related to it. Again, we surveyed them and analyzed them. And the final approach was to identify how their perception, it affected their choices of sustainability in life. Moving on, I'll introduce you to the study area, that is Lucknow. So Lucknow is the capital of Uttar Pradesh, a North Indian state. And as you can see from this map, it lies in the high vulnerability risk of climate sensitivity zone, as per the Ministry of Environmental Studies report. Now, here you can see that the decadal variation of rainfall, it has drastically fallen now. From 1971 to 2010, within these 40 years, that the fall has been drastic. Even the average rainfall of Lucknow, it has fallen from 400 plus to 200 plus only within a period of about 20 years. Now, the temperature variance which has happened in during the period of 1971 and 2010, we can see that the maximum and the minimum temperatures, they have seen a very, very drastic variation. So we can understand that the climate change has affected the microclimate of Lucknow through a scientific study. Coming to the report of Ministry of Earth Sciences assessment of climate change over the Indian region, it states that India's average temperature has risen by about 0.7 degrees centigrade during a period of 1901 to 2018. And by the end of this century, if this trend continues, we'll see a drastic change of 4.4 degrees centigrade in the overall temperature of the country. Talking about the methodology which we have used, we chose the sample through various social media platforms. 200 people were chosen through various social platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, Instagram, and various UPSC forums. E-forms were sent out to them. We received only 71 responses within the stipulated time of 15 days. And then out of those 71, only 43 were complete in all senses. So only those 43 papers were considered for the analysis part. Overall, 45.45% were female respondents and 54.55% were male respondents, which is somewhat close to the overall sex ratio of Lucknow. Then the majority of people, at 79.55% of the respondents, they lied within the age bracket of 20 to 35 years of age. So it reflects more the youth of the city. Now, coming to the tools which we have used, QuestionPro is a website which we used for the preparation of the survey forms, and for spreading it, people could respond through their smartphones, laptops, and tablets, and the data was collected to Microsoft Excels. Now that data was analyzed and the compilation was done in the software called Microsoft 365. Now, the scope and limitations which we faced, the basic limitation which all of us faced as researchers was the pandemic scenario, which caused a physical constraint for us to travel and interact with people. So the survey was restricted to an online medium, and this caused the absence of a very significant population of the illiterate people of Lucknow. The limitation was also there that we could have spread out this survey to the peri-urban areas also, but then we were restricted to the online medium. So we restricted ourselves to the city limits. Coming to the analysis part, initially I would like to brief the world climate change phenomena which is happening. The economists of present scenario, we consider that the per capita carbon dioxide emissions, they continuously relate to countries' economic development. Until and unless this stays, it is very much evident that the world economy would be carbon-based. And if the world economy is carbon-based, that would imply that climate change, it cannot be de-linked with economic growth at all. Here in this table, you can see it's a table made by German Watch about global climate risk index. So India lies on the 7th number, which states that India is very highly under the risk of global climate change. And in this table, the very significant factor is that out of the 10 countries, 6 countries belong to the lower middle income group. And here you can see that total CO2 emissions by world regions, if we consider, India lies to about more than 15 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions, which is drastic. We just are falling short of China. Global GHG emissions and the global warming scenarios, as per the report of Our World in Data, it states that if the present trend is to be continued and no policies are introduced, we will see a drastic change of 4.1 to 4.8 degrees centigrade by the end of this century. But if the current policies which are in place are to continue, we'll see a shift of about 3 degrees centigrade by the end of this century, which is still too much as per the international standards. If the pledges and targets made in the Kyoto Protocol and all the reports, if those are followed, still we'll have a change of about 2.5 degrees centigrade, which we should be targeting about 1.5 degrees centigrade only. Coming to the paper, the people's perception about weather changes was the first phase. So we asked them about how they felt that how many people of their family, they were affected from seasonal diseases and whether that those diseases were caused by the weather changes which were happening in Lucknow. So 12 out of 43 people responded that yes, it was affecting their family members. And about half the people responded that their family members, they felt that the city's weather was getting uncomfortable. So the observations we made was that the change was very much significant enough for a majority of people. And the health of the people is very much being affected with it. Now, coming to the second question we asked them, it was about whether that there was a change in the weather from their residential locality to their workplace. So 65% people responded in a yes. That states that there is a very big change within the city limits also. So the effect is very dire if it is to be considered. And then we asked them how important did they think was the following issues in their city. So in this, we see that urban flooding was the major issue they faced, but then temperature rise or drop was also a very significant factor for them. We asked them to rate on a scale of 1 to 10 how they thought that climate change could threaten their personal health and safety. So almost all of them rated it 5 to 10. That is, almost everyone believed that it affected. And 30% people, they responded in a 10. That is, they strongly believe that it is affecting their personal health and safety. Now, in the second phase, we asked them about the global concerns. So this figure as close as it gets to 5, it speaks that the majority of the people, they believe that this is true. And we can see that the highest rated one is that global warming and climate change poses a serious threat for people around the world. So people of Lucknow, they are understanding that this phenomena is happening and it is affecting people throughout the world. The second important point which came out was that 4.39, that is about 80% of the people, they responded that they were ready to reduce their energy usages for tackling the climate change, which means they are ready to change their lifestyle patterns also, depending on this perception. So we asked them to rate on a scale of 1 to 5, which issues were of major concern to Lucknow in their opinion, and 1 was lowest, 5 was highest. And we found out that global warming and climate change, they felt was the most important factor of concern for Lucknow. Coming to the next phase, we asked them about whether they will choose a sustainable lifestyle. So we gave them 3 options. One was to create whether they would do this for creating a good image, second for monetary benefit, or for the sake of environment. So we see that people were 100% of the respondents, they were ready to plant more trees just for the sake of the benefit of environment. About 2.97, that is 97% of the people were ready to recycle waste for sustainability, and 3% they were doing it for monetary causes also. About 58% respondents, they were ready to reduce the energy consumption for the sake of environment alone. 42%, they said that it was just for the monetary benefit. Now, we asked them finally that considering their knowledge about risks associated with climate change, how likely were they to recommend it to a friend to promote such activities for a clean and green lifestyle? So the majority of them, they responded in a yes, and they rated it 10. That means the highest, they believe that it is really important to spread the word about this. Coming to the conclusion part, the various conclusions which we have derived in a two-phased approach are that the weather of Lucknow has changed over the previous decades, and this climate change phenomena which is happening throughout the world, it has affected the microclimate of Lucknow as a city alone. So that means we can observe that if it is happening in a very small city, how much effect does it have over the entire world? And people have felt that the seasonal shift and temperature variance have happened, and they are very much significant for people to observe. We also observed that people's perception about how these changes were happening in the environment and how it was affecting them, it also led for them to choose sustainable lifestyle phenomena, and they were ready to give up their easiness of life, their comfort of life, just for the sake of environment alone. Now, the concluding remark which we made was that we think that it's very important to educate the masses about the environment and global concerns such as climate change. That would enable them to become more and more understanding of their environment and would ensure that they choose a healthier, greener, and a more sustainable lifestyle pattern for the future generations to come. Now, finally, how do we see a way forward? Beyond this paper, what approach do we see? So we believe that the real world problems, utilizing education and academic rigor, we can bring those problems to the professional and personal lifestyles. We bring them to the people, and we build the capacity of the youth leaders to carry forward these sustainability initiatives. Now, humans and natures have long coexist in the past also, and we believe that they will be coexisting in the future generations too. So it's really important to disseminate climate change education among the people as well as the policy makers, because all the stakeholders, they need to understand that it is really important that climate change as a phenomena is understood and it is tackled. This is a case study which my co-author, Dr. Abdul Razak Mohammed, has published. It's about a biodiversity in his house in Chennai. So this, here you can see he has a lot of plants, he has a lot of fruits and vegetables growing inside of his house, and there are various insects also there. So it's a very small biodiversity which is there on a very small level. But then considering this example, we can say that if this was the approach of every person in the world, then we could very much counteract the climate change phenomena on our own. Without the involvement of even the governance, we can carry out the climate change we can counter the climate change on our own as individuals. So our ability to manage human movement and living in neighborhoods, it will determine the course of the centuries to come. And we believe that small start may lead to a very big impact. So we need to have a motto of living smart and living with nature. So finally, I would like to propose a 5-point approach, which I think is suitable for the Indian cities. We need to plan our cities more resilient. We need to plan our cities with a green governance approach. We need to have a waste and carbon footprint reduction policy in place. Just like countries like Barcelona, places like Barcelona and Spain are very much doing this for the past decade. We need to realize that it is really important for us. And finally, people's participation is really necessary. It's a democracy, so public participation is really necessary if we are to tackle climate change and come out as the victor and prove that our selfish needs and our selfish desires won't affect the needs of the future generations to come. These are the various references which we used for the paper. Thank you, and questions are very much welcome. And I would really like to thank Adani Institute of Infrastructure and Management for giving us this opportunity. And also a special thanks to the conference coordinator for keeping us informed always and spending so much time discussing the various things with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kshitij, for your one very comprehensive presentation and highlighting some key points. Firstly, in terms of present state of the cities, and probably I think you have highlighted about Lucknow, but that may be true for all the cities all over country, that there is some amount of climate change impacts are now started being felt, which I think were being doubted for last almost 2 decades but now we are really feeling that rainfalls are dropping in our cities, or some places it's a too much rainfall started coming, like in Rajasthan. If we look into, we never had a history of floods, but cities like Barmer or Ajmer, and they all started receiving floods in last couple of years. Though it is not entirely to be put on the put on the theme of climate change. A lot of things is to also do from the city planning and infrastructure planning perspective. Both has to put together as a right understanding. And I think being a student of planning and architecture, you also have brought out the something which need to be improved upon in terms of making city more resilient. You also have brought out a kind of very good analysis, or at least for a kind of some satisfaction to the people like us who were making hue and cry, or who were also talking about climate change for last 20 years since the Kyoto Protocol was signed. And I was, in fact, working at IIM at that time when Kyoto Protocol was being designed in 1997 as a fresh graduate, very fresh graduate. And I was just wondering what this protocol is about. And today we see that everyone is talking about this protocol. And happy to note that there are citizens who are ready to do something, who are ready to come forward and do something. So it is not only for Lucknow, but it may be true for all over India and all over globe as well. Citizens are much aware, informed about the climate change, its impact, and they started monitoring it also sensitively. They started feeling, okay, why this is happening, why rainfall is changing, maybe climate change is the reason, though it is not conclusive. City infrastructure, which also need to be improved on. But yes, certain key points, cities are not having the sufficient biodiversity, that is what well understood by now. And planting the tree, a kind of citizens agreement on planting the tree is very happy point to note it. And that should be the first step and one of the easiest steps for us to do as an individual, as a citizen. And at least I think 50% of the citizens are ready, what I can capture from your survey, are ready to do anything to reduce the climate change. All the kind of what you asked for, changing the lifestyle, they are ready to do, 50% people. However, 80 to 90% of the people are at least ready to plant the tree and do the waste recycling. These are the two important key components. And probably I think role of the media and role of the government is also important to highlight these two things. Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, as well as I think Green India Mission, which is now going on. And a lot of legendary, or you can say renowned personalities of the country which have made these campaigns much more, you can say, forceful or much more impactful of the country. That's important. Third thing is what I've noted in your presentation is also the individual. Individual can make a change. So if you make change in your own domain, in your own house, and probably I think that is a desire of every one of us. The question lies that how do we scale it up? How do we bring this good intended, good people together? And that's how the activities start taking shape as a campaign and the society improve as a whole. So these are the few questions in my mind. And though I think I will leave it to the community first to start asking the question. There are a few questions already in a chat box. First question comes from the Ritvik. The question is, how do you balance about the information coming to the citizens about the climate change? I think this comes from the perspective that everyone seems to be aware of climate change. Now the question is information about the right solutions and information about the right way of tackling it. Probably how do you see the balance, bring the balance?
So we believe that, so we did this study to observe that whether people's perception was affecting their choices or not. So the conclusion was that people's perception was very much affecting their choices in lifestyle, as well as the changes they wanted to do. So what we believe is that this particular phenomena can be tackled only if all of us work together, not just the people, not just the government, not just the businesses. It has to be everyone's approach. We have to work together for countering such a drastic climate change phenomena which is happening. It's affecting the entire world. So the world has to come together to counteract it. And the information spreading, what I believe is that it can be a top-down approach. The government can take initiatives to inform the citizens more about such phenomena, educate more and more people about how their choices are affecting the environment and how those effects over the environment, they are coming back and affecting those people in the hindsight. So it's like a karma which is happening and it's going back and affecting you again. So we need to understand and we need to be educated. Media, social media platforms, and all such initiatives can be spread out. People can be informed in through various presentations. Now it's an online medium, but if things get better soon and we are amongst people again, so then we can carry out even now we can carry out various phenomena, various webinars and various literary. There was a book called Rachel's book, The Silent Spring, which actually raised a lot of concern over the use of DDT. So literature can play a very big role in such an initiative. So I would say it has to be everyone's approach, and every art and every literary author and everyone has to participate in it and give and play his part.
Yeah, Kshitij, thanks for this answer. And I will be putting the two questions which are somehow I'm trying to relate it together. Yes. The question is that what do you think of early educating children about the climate change and environmental issues in general? What is a benefit of doing that? Is it more benefit? And along with that, the second link, that how do you bring out a kind of demonstrative projects in terms of the sustainable park where children can grow and learn by touching and seeing the tree and biodiversity, and that's a kind of culture and the you can say kind of sensitivity they bring back to their whole life, throughout the life, that carry it forward. So what do you think this is importance through your interaction with your respondents or from the literature? Yeah.
Sir, I believe that the example we took towards the end as a way forward, if everyone has a very small lawn in his house or her house, they will have a few plants planted over there. There will be insects, there will be butterflies. If children, they see those insects and those butterflies, they live amongst those plants. They will understand the importance. They'll consider them as a part of their own life. And as city planners, as town planners, we can take this approach when we design cities, because after all, houses are a very small unit of cities and towns. but they play the same role. It's a part of a system within a system. So we need to take that approach to a bigger level. We need to plan our cities sustainably. We need to have more and more parks and green spaces. Our educational institutions, they need to understand that it is really important for students, especially kids of very young age, to spend time apart from their books and among the green, so that they can understand and feel how it affects them, and understand and perceive that when they grow up, that perception would really affect the choices they make. Greta Thunberg chose to say no to airplanes at a young age of 8 years. That was really astounding. If one child can do that, our education, if we impart that education to our children, then I think that approach will be taken up by more and more children, because at a younger age, people are very much observable and they understand things pretty easily and deeply.
Yeah. Exactly. Right, I think, Kshitij. And I will also like to share here my personal experience, which relates to both of these questions asked by Aditi about the children's education and from the Jayavardhan about the demonstrative projects. I was, I think, engaged and was also promoting a small organization who actually has intention to take kids of something like 10 years, up to 10 years of the age, to nature every week or once in a month and show them the different life stages of the different species. Or even for example, how do you get a butterfly? Every kid's like butterfly, but they don't know how that butterfly life cycle is there. And then once we demonstrated, you look at the butterfly, and their pupa and their whole life cycle depends on only this particular tree. They don't go to every tree and have their, you can say, eggs laid down, and only on the few trees. That's where the kids understand the importance of that tree.
Yeah.
There are certain trees which attracts birds much more as compared to other. While I think when we look into the landscaping in urban planning, since we are part of the urban planning, sometimes we miss out those ones. So there are trees I myself observed and always used to tell my students, near to your hostel, learn about that tree. Whenever you pass through, you will listen hundreds of the birds all throughout the day, evening, night are creeping. They are tweeting around that, and not other tree. So why? That means that tree is so important that it should not go away, because hundreds of the birds all the time are sitting. So these are the things come from the observation, and rightly you have said, and question from the Jayavardhan. Yes, we need such kind of demonstrative projects, and institutions have to play a role. Institution means every institutions, every college, university or schools have to have their own biodiversity park, a small park, an area where they can demonstrate to the student. I was also supporting this activity as a sustainable campus activities at different places.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Kshitij, to bring out this issue.
So one thing I would like to add to you, whatever you said. So even I have a small lawn at my place, and what I've observed that the more the color of flowers are there, the more the type of insects which would crawl into your place.
Yes.
So that increases the biodiversity. That space is very much restricted. It's been there for 15 years. So that area is not increasing. But the biodiversity there, it's keeping on increasing over a period of time. So that way, if that approach is taken by us urban planners and environmental planners, I suppose we can bring about a very big change.
Right. I think Professor Aditi has to add something. You are on mute. Yeah. You are on mute, Aditi. I can't listen.
Ma'am, you are not audible.
No, not yet. Not audible.
Diti ma'am, I request you to kindly please re-log in, maybe log out and log in once again.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I will see if there is any other question. Professor Aditi will log in. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I think a related question that because climate change is one of the very wide subject. What do you think, Kshitij, is the role of in terms of the visuals and the other media other than you can say literature? Because as you have mentioned that books like Silent Spring or the Spaceship Earth, these are the some of the classic books. Every student who has an interest in environment and climate should read it. That's recommended. But at the same time, we do understand now. I think there's a very less time, a book time. There's a more screen time students have. So in that context, what do you think the kind of and then whole media is flooded with all sorts of the information. So what do you think is a right way that I think people can be guided to look into the visuals and movies? Yeah.
So personally,
did you find among your own community that people are using and learning from that one, or just they learn from certain sensitive? What I'm saying, a one person who speaks out a statement of their own mind, even me, is my own personal view. But there are movies which put the things in a right perspective, done by the authentic sources. So I think that's where the question comes in. I can make a point, get sensitized, and blow it up out of proportion, and that is I can become famous. That's what is people are trying to do versus actual science part of the climate change. Like IPCC is one of the standardized material, UNFCCC is a standardized material anybody wants to learn, and there are certain universities and certain other resources, web resources, one should read it rather than somebody who is listening to me what the climate change is about. Yeah, that's my personal view. That's important. But authenticity of the sources of information so that people get a balanced view and information rather than issues to sensitize and also to increase the TRPs. So that's, I think, personal TRPs. So that's, I think, something you can throw a light which are the sources you have used it so that people know it in audience to refer. Yeah. Yes, Kshitij. Yeah, now Diti is online. Yeah.
I guess Kshitij has frozen now. Sir, mine was more of a little anecdotal reference since I was in the presence of urban gardeners, Kshitij being one, Dr. Abdul Razak being another. A small little suggestion and an observation. So I am an urban gardener. I also plant a lot of trees and plants around me in public spaces in my own space. One of the things that I noticed is there are certain plants, as you rightly mentioned, which are not recognized by the local species. So it's a good idea to learn what is indigenous to the land. And that is something which can give us a lot of insights as to how we can create an ecosystem that is one. Just to add to what Kshitij has been saying. Thank you, Kshitij, for joining back. So I was just talking about how indigenous species of flora are extremely important in our entire greening project. That's one. Another thing is when I talk about indigenous plants, I also want to mention other indigenous capital, the knowledge capital that we have. And we had Professor Anil Gupta talking about things in the morning. He referred to the social capital and knowledge capital. And since Kshitij is from planning background, I want to describe one tribal home that I regularly go to and the structure of that tribal home and how that encourages biodiversity. So a typical tribal home in Panchamahal will have, as soon as you enter, a space out there for animals. Animals don't stay outside. When I talk about animals, I talk about milch animals. So all the goats and cows and buffaloes are in the first layer of your home. Then the moment you walk inside, and I'm talking about a mud house, the moment you walk inside, you are greeted by the chirps of birds. So the rooftop is reserved for birds of various kinds. And, and then comes one room, a common room for people. And wherever you go in Panchamahal, as long as you go to a mud house, you will see this structure, this indigenous embracing biodiversity within the small space that you have created. Evidence. I'm sure there are a lot of local knowledge systems to learn a lot from. With that, I would also want to appreciate Kshitij's own resilience and tenacity And we know that, Kshitij, you have your loved ones in the ICU right now, and still you chose to be with us and passionately share your paper. So a big thank you to you. May your cousin get better soon.
Yeah, thanks,
Thanks a
Kshitij,
lot.
taking out
Thanks a
time
lot,
for
ma'am.
such a challenging situation around you. And with the God blessings, nothing will, I think, nothing less than, you can say, coming back with a more resilience will happen. I think everyone comes back more resilience. Here, I think I would also like
Thank
to
you, ma'am.
add what the Professor Diti is saying. As I mentioned, that lot of the people are doing at an individual level, but we have to bring them together so that things get scaled up, and there's a lot of peer sharing of the knowledge, indigenous as well as new knowledge. New knowledge in a sense, like in last 1 year of lockdown, I learned personally in terms of germinating any kind of seeds. So now if you give me any kind of seed, or if you say that I want this plant, I can germinate from the seed. I learned it doing my own balcony. Though I think some of them did not survive because I had to go out for a couple of months without having, I think, plants. So I will again germinate it. So I can say that genetic material, if given to us in a right way, we are capable of germinating biodiversity back. So I've learned to germinate most of the seeds in this lockdown period of myself. So I think maybe Professor Diti has to have another session on this individual and small gardening, urban gardening. And I desire to do that, I think, sometime, personal desire. A lot of people out here in Ahmedabad and every city, they're connecting with each other. And now this is going to the next phase or next campaign countrywide, which I see in terms of scaling up plantation and scaling up the greenery. That's where citizens are now moving forward, and they will take the charge in their hand now, rather than leaving it to the government as such. So people are asking the government to the land, tell me where I have to plant my 100 tree. So I am also ready. If somebody says this is a land and you have to plant the tree, and somebody is going to own that land so that this is not dug out next day, so I can plant 100 tree any day. So that's, I think, scale everyone is sensitive about. Yes. Thanks for Kshitij. Maybe final line from
Thank you, sir.
Give it back.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, ma'am, for your wishes. And as of now, my cousin has been relieved from the hospital yesterday. So thank you. And we should have more and more conferences about the green things. It's really important for India, and it's really important to educate our people, I believe, that about things like environmental impact assessment. Because as of now, India fails at only one place, that we don't get to make people understand about the various rights and various things which they have, but they cannot use because they don't know.
Right.
Right, with that spirit of doing good, greater common social good for everybody, I would now invite Yashraj to close these proceedings and extend a vote of thanks to all of you.
Indeed, it was a very insightful and very engaging session filled with knowledge, sharing, and experience. First and foremost, I would like to thank Professor Ashwini Kumar for sharing your precious time and follow our technical session on social infrastructure and sustainability and putting light on community bonding. Thank you, sir. It was also very inspiring how the paper presenters actually engaged with the session chair and answered the questions that were set out to them. So my heartfelt thanks goes out to all of them. My thanks goes out to Dr. Diti Vyas. You have been exceptionally helpful, ma'am, in the entire session. Thanks a lot. My heartfelt thanks goes out to Juhi Gandhi, Akash Chandratre, and the conference team. Everyone have been very helpful and supportive in making this session a successful one. And finally, before I end, I must say the audience have been exceptional, because without a disciplined and engaging audience, a conference cannot be successful. You all did a wonderful job. So thank you, everyone. The next session is on energy and green infrastructure. It will start soon. Have a good day. Thank you.